TitleMatchNetwork.com.
What are some of your memories of going to Japan and wrestling the original Tiger Mask?
I remember the drop kick he gave me in Sapporo. I think it's funny. I was writing a list of concussions that they wanted a detailed account of anything I can remember as being a concussion, and I have to say that was pretty close to one. He hit me with a drop kick off the top rope that almost killed me. I don't know how I got back to the dressing room. But all in all, he was a hard worker, and I think he was a big time innovator. Like, he changed the whole course of the business. I think him and Dynamite both did. I enjoyed working with him. He was a very skilled, really good wrestler. The thing about him was, for me, I was never really a junior heavyweight, but that's kind of the only offering I had at the time in Japan.
That was one of my questions. Was the style hard to adjust to over there?
Yeah, all of it was hard. Japan was always tough for me. I was too much of a worker, to be honest.
Right.
I never. I mean, I did okay in the end once I realized that's how it works over there. You got to struggle for it and fight for it. I always just reasoned that it was easier to work a match. In those days, there was always a pecking order when you went to Japan. So if 8 guys were on a tour, whoever was the bottom of the pile, they never sold for them. And I think the very first time I went, it was a little bit like that. I found myself having to literally fight through every match. And they used to, when they used to work the matches out, they'd always they'd have the cue on when they could go home.
Right.
They'd set it up that way. I learned quickly that you can't let them do that because they'd totally blow you up. And as soon as they blow you up, you'd still go another 5-10 minutes where they just basically, you couldn't even get your hands up to defend yourself. And it's like they just take such advantage of you. And the funny thing about all those guys was just the young guys or the middle guys. Inoki, Fujinami, Tiger Mask, all those guys were great workers. Ricky Choshu, when they wanted to work with you, they could all work with you. But in those days, I wasn't working with those guys. So Japan was always tough. Usually if I was there for 6 weeks, the last 3 weeks were my better matches. First 3 weeks, it was hand-to-hand combat kind of thing. And I never really enjoyed it. I always lost weight.
Right.
Japan was hard. I always think of it as the pro wrestling Olympics. You really had to go and fight for your right to fame and fortune kind of thing.
Then you wound up back in the States?
I worked 6 different tours in Japan. I worked Stampede Wrestling and had some really unbelievable matches with Dynamite. I think I brought out a lot in Dynamite too. I don't think, Tiger Mask is a different style match and it was great. Dynamite had some really great matches with Fujinami. And he had some great matches with Nelson Royal, different guys. But some of the matches I had with Dynamite, I'd say were better than all those guys put together. I had the very first ladder match with Dynamite. I basically brought the ladder matches to the WWF just so everyone knows. That was a stolen sort of idea.
Right.
Dynamite may have the most unbelievable ladder match. It was always with a lot of color and all that kind of stuff. But they were so unbelievable. One guy, for example, Adrian Street, I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
He still to this day talks about the one ladder match I had was like the most unbelievable match. And it's true. It's always stood out in my mind as one of my absolute best matches. And it was all based on reality. Like, it was so real in those days, the wrestling matches. And the ladder match I had with Dynamite, I just remember it was that same old finish where he drop kicked the ladder and he took an unbelievable bump over the top rope. Cement floors in those days.
Right.
And I remember scrambling up, but I remember the ladder fell on the rope and then fell back, and I had to roll out of the way. It almost killed me. It was pretty dangerous stuff, and it missed me by about this much. But the excitement of it all was like, if you were watching it, the suspense, because everyone could see the ladder falling on me. And so I had some really good matches, Stampede Wrestling with Dynamite.
Some of your matches with Bad News?
Nah, I never thought they were any good at all. Bad News, unfortunately, he had a bad psychology. His psychology was to eat you up, cut you off in the middle of your comeback, and see how that drew the next week.
Right.
It's like, geez, he had a lot of trouble understanding that it was a work, and that up here there was a limited amount of stars that they could push. He had the same problem I think with my brother Owen. The fact that it wasn't so much Owen wanting to be a big star and me wanting to be a big star. We were the only stars we had, and you had to look out for the stars you had. Bad News never saw it. He kind of had a fucked up Japan. I remember when I first met him, we wouldn't take an arm drag. And near the end of his career, he was nothing but a guy taking silly bumps.
Right.
But in the beginning, he was pretty tough to work with. He didn't sell anything.